Good morning. This is Crystal Woods with Seasons in the Vine, and it's Fresh Friday. Today, I want to talk to you about how to deal with ourselves when we just see things differently than others. And I actually ran across this quote in a book I have been slowly making my way through. I don't really care for the book, so I'm not going to share it. I'll just kind of cover it up. But the quote in here is really good. It's from Lloyd Shearer, not the author of the book, but just the quote. And it says, "Resolve to be tender with the young, compassionate with the aged, sympathetic with the striving, and tolerant of the weak and the wrong. Sometimes in life, you will have been all of these. Sometime in life, you will have been all of these. You will have been young, you will be aged, you will be caught striving, you will be weak, you will be wrong." And when I read that, I thought, I totally resonate with this. I think this is a lesson that I'm still learning. So today is just as much about where I'm at as where you're at, and we're going to trust Jesus to just speak to us in the individual ways that he wants to. But putting yourself in somebody else's shoes, I really was terrible at this. I was just very right fighter, very judgmental, very quick to assumption, and all of that really came from, there's a couple places. I think by and large for me, it came from woundedness or the desire to not be hurt. And so I will get you before you get me. And then also it's really pride though, because what I'm saying is if I'm right, you don't matter, or your opinion doesn't matter compared to mine. And that's all pride. That's a very high elevation of ourselves at the expense of another person. This has been a long journey for me. And I can say age has not mellowed me out. It's truly been a work of the Holy Spirit. It's really been fruit of submitting to him and forcing myself, disciplining myself to consider the other side, to consider the position of someone else, to consider what led them to the action that they took. What might have been going on in them? Because see, we like to villainize other people, especially if they've hurt us or offended us. Offense is huge. I'm not going to talk about offense today, but man, I could talk about offense a lot. But it's such a trap of the enemy. But anyway, I'm not going to talk about that today. So when I sit on my high horse in my upper position and I just look at all the wrong somebody else does, a lot of times we're doing that because we're trying to justify what we did in response, or we're trying to justify what we're not going to do in response, like forgive or be gracious or be kind. When something terrible happens, don't we have a desire sometimes to figure out what they did wrong and that's why it happened? Because we can't grasp the idea that bad things just happen sometimes. And that's just a part of the fallen world. We want to trace back somebody's at fault. There's a reason for this because we can't deal with the unknowns. We can't deal with what seems to be just out of the blue circumstance. And so we try to trace back instead of just saying, man, I don't even know. I don't think I care whose fault it is. This is just terrible. This is just really sad. I don't want to know all the reasons why. I don't think I need to. I just need to know God is grieved. God is grieved. And really starting from there. And so this idea in the quote of, being tender with people, and specifically they talked about the young, but I think tenderness in general really comes from a place of knowing that we're safe and secure in God and that he is our protector. If I'm trying to protect myself, I can tell you it's not going to be tender. And I think I've learned a lot of lessons over the last 9 years. And I have to say, my biggest tool to growth in this area has been failure. My biggest ability to now see people and to just consider their view, consider their position, consider, okay, yeah, they made that decision and that decision and that decision, and those were all wrong, and that's how they ended up where they ended up. But is to just consider the brokenness behind all of it, the sin behind all of it, the reason those choices were made, and just thinking like, if I was in the same situation, if I didn't know God maybe, or even this person knows God, if I had a different upbringing, if I had different trigger points, maybe I would be just like them. And when we can say that truly, I could become them with just a happenstance, with just one bad thing happening to me or one wrong decision, I could have been the bad one. Then we are allowed to be tender. Then we can bring the compassion, we can bring the grace to that person, where otherwise we might withhold that and we wouldn't want to see that. And the other thing is that's understanding how they got there. But I think for me, I mentioned how failure has been such a great teacher, because I have to do this. I literally did this yesterday. I have to think about how that person lied to me, manipulated me, betrayed me right to my face. Okay, let's just play it out like an example. Okay, like I think about that and I could be offended. But then the Lord says, but who have you been, Crystal? Who have you been? Have you been perfect? Have you ever lied? Have you ever manipulated? Have you ever betrayed someone? And I have done all of those things. And I would probably say you have to some degree, maybe not specifically the same, but we've all fallen short of the glory of God. And when I apply that, and the Lord convicts me strongly in that, like, you could go down this rabbit hole of this person did this, and to me, and we villainize them, and they're the problem. And when we do all of that, we're going to be offended. We are going to live in offense. We're going to be bitter, resentful, and angry. And there's another option. And the other option is to say, and this is how the Lord works with me and it corrects me, who have you been? Who could say these things about you? And you want them to be gracious towards you, don't you? But you don't want to be gracious towards somebody who's hurt you in a similar way. It works every time, guys, like a charm. It works. It's very Christian, actually, for the Lord to convict in that way. And I said charm, and I thought that probably has a weird meaning to it. It doesn't work like a charm. It works like a Christian. God convicts, and he brings to our awareness, our mind, the things that we've done, not in an accusatory way, like he's not keeping a record of wrongs, but in a conviction way of who have you been? How have you needed the grace and compassion of someone else? And maybe take that, your need for that. And that's what I've learned the last 9 years more than anything. And also, I think when we villainize people, if there's a villain, there's a victim. And then that means we're the victim. And I'm not saying we don't call sin, crime. I'm not saying we don't use right language for bad behavior. This is exactly what happened. It was this, and this. I'm not saying that. But what I'm saying is when we get to the point of villainizing and really adding that on, then somebody's the victim. And then that means we're the victim. And then we get into like victim identity and, how poor, pitiful me, and if only this person would have done me right, and all of that. But it's like choices and decisions. And there's like millions and billions of them happening across the whole earth at all times. And God sees them all and knows them all before they even happen. But all of these things are choices. Your choice to be with that person, your choice to do wrong, their choice to do this. Choices. And I say this to my kids all the time. It's a lot about choices. But when we When we look at another in judgment, and I'm not saying we don't call things what they are. I'm talking about when you take it a step further and when you look at them in judgment and you decide to withhold the grace of God, you scheme against them, whatever, all of these things, you're cold, you lie, you're distant, you're mean-spirited, back, unforgiving, bitter, you fill in the blank. When we go into that extreme, we're not bearing the fruit of what God has done in us first. And I love how Paul says he's the foremost of all sinners. So he's like, hey, if anybody deserves to be judged, it's me. And I feel that way. If I can apply that to myself, if anybody deserves to be judged, it's me, then I'm less likely to go around putting big walls up between me and somebody who just sins differently, or between me and somebody who just had a different way of handling things. And yet I have been handling things my way, and that hasn't always been perfect. I hope this makes sense. I'm going to read the quote again, and I hope it leaves you today with a renewed sense of being compassionate, being tender, being like Jesus. I don't mean tolerating sin. I don't mean codependency. I don't mean tolerating abuse. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about normal stuff. But also, even if those things have occurred, we're not going to tolerate them, but we also don't have to become the victim of them, like a victim mindset and a victim identity. Resolve, and love this, resolve, make the decision, decide to be tender with the young. They just don't know things yet. Be compassionate with the aged. They know a lot, and now they've lost a lot, and their bodies are failing and their minds may be failing. Be compassionate and also respect and honor the roads that they've walked. Be sympathetic with the striving. Man, striving we know is wrong, but we can all fall into it. And just having sympathy in that, and being tolerant of the weak, meeting people where they are, bearing each other's burden is a Christian thing to do. Being strong for one another. And tolerating the wrong. That's where it gets really hard, especially if you're a right fighter. This is just right. And I'm not saying we call black white and white black and right wrong and wrong right. Guys, I'm a real truth line girl, right? I'm not saying that. I'm saying we don't fold on that, but can we at least see the perspective of someone else? Can we listen to the story long enough? Or are we going to allow our presuppositions and our judgments to hinder what could be a way forward together? Sometime in life, you have been all of these things. You have been wrong. You have been weak. You have been striving. You will be aged, or you are aged, and you have been young. So go with that lens into everything in your life. Everything. It's been really powerful for me. And does it require a tremendous amount of forgiveness? Yeah, but that's exactly what he did for me. So freely I have received, and freely I'm to give. 70 times 7. I'll see you next week.